This podcast is presented by Skies Magazine. If you're interested in the Canadian aviation industry, Skies is your go-to multimedia resource for the latest news, in-depth features, stunning photography, and insightful video coverage. Whether you're an aviation professional or enthusiast, Skies is dedicated to keeping you informed and bringing your passion for aviation to life. Visit skiesmag.com to learn more and subscribe to stay updated on all things Canadian aviation.
Fuel and ignition switches on. RPM switches set. TD switches normal. Doors and hatches closed. Light out. Strobe light on. Restart check is complete. Clear left. Engineers, start number 2. Starting 2. Wind 310, Pilot Project Podcast, clear takeoff, runway 31 left.
All right, we're ready for departure here at the Pilot Project Podcast, the best source for stories and advice from RCAF and mission aviation pilots, brought to you by Skies Magazine. I'm your host, Brian Morrison, and here with me today for our series on the MSC Baltic III rescue is special guest Major Pete Wright, former commanding officer of 103 SAR Squadron in Gander, Newfoundland, and Warrant Officer Greg Hudson, former SAR Tech lead of 103 SAR Squadron. Today we will be talking about what led them both to join the RCAF, some of their training, and the path that led them to take part in the epic MSC Baltic III rescue in February of 2025. Pete, Greg, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
We'll start by talking to Pete, but before that, let's go through Pete's bio. Major Pete Wright was born in Calgary, Alberta, and grew up across Canada as a military child. Inspired at a young age by the original Top Gun, he set his sights early on becoming a Royal Canadian Air Force pilot. He enrolled in the Canadian Armed Forces in 2000 under the regular officer training plan and graduated from the Royal Military College of Canada in 2004 with a degree in business administration. After commissioning, he completed on-the-job training at squadrons nationwide, flying in the back of multiple aircraft and discovering that his true calling lay in rotary wing search and rescue. In 2010, Pete earned his wings at 3 Canadian Forces Flying Training School and was selected to fly the CH-149 Cormorant. Posted first to 442 Transport and Rescue Squadron in Comox, he embraced West Coast SAR operations before moving to 103 Search and Rescue Squadron in Gander, where he served as a line pilot, instructor pilot, instrument check pilot, and later pilot lead. In 2018, he was chosen as the Rotary Wing Search and Rescue Exchange Officer with the United States Coast Guard, or USCG, in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Flying just under 1,000 hours on the MH-60T Jayhawk, he strengthened Canadian-American interoperability through intensive joint training and cultural exchange. Promoted to Major in 2020, he completed an additional 2 years with the USCG before returning to Ottawa to work in the Directorate of Air Readiness. Pete assumed command of 103 SAR Squadron in 2024, leading the RCAF's busiest SAR unit through a high operational tempo, major rescues, and key organizational initiatives. In 2025, he returned to Ottawa to support future RCAF capability development and reunite with his wife, Chantel. With more than 4,000 flying hours and 217 SAR missions, Pete considers it a privilege to serve with Canada's search and rescue community. 25 years after joining the CAF, the calling remains as meaningful as ever. These things we do that others may live. Rescue. So, Pete, take us back to the beginning. When did aviation shift from a childhood inspiration to a real career goal?
So honestly, it started with Top Gun, much like probably a lot of my generation joining the military and wanting to fly. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Then I realized where they were located, and that wasn't really ideal for me back in the early days. So I was hoping at that point to fly multi-engine fixed wing and eventually fly for Air Canada. And yeah, kind of through a couple twists and turns, ended up going rotary wing by choice, and ended up in the SAR community, which has been absolutely amazing.
How did the military lifestyle growing up shape your adaptability and interest in flying?
Well, like growing up as a military kid kind of meant that you were good at packing boxes and making new friends everywhere you went, and making them quickly. So it taught me very early, you had to be able to adapt. Change was kind of constant. New schools, new provinces, new weather patterns, and kind of aviation almost felt like a bit of an extension of that. You're planning, but you're also always adapting to, what's next and all the constant changes you're going through. So, it just, the two kind of meshed. I loved the idea of flying until I actually got into it. And then once I started, it was an obsession. It was phenomenal.
Yeah. You talked about the skill of making friends quickly. It's funny because that's actually a pretty important skill within the military as well, because there's so many times where you're on a course for like a week, 2 weeks. You spend time with all these great people. And then sometimes you'll end up like sparking a friendship on one of those courses that you'll keep in touch with those people for like the rest of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And the military is an awesome place in that, a lot of the people that you meet, you kind of already have like this baseline level of trust and things that are in common. So it's super easy to kind of pick it up from there and be like, okay, you're a good dude or a good dudette. You're an awesome individual, and it just kind of kicks off. And yeah, I think the other huge positive thing about the military is that you're not necessarily in one location forever, and you end up moving to places that you probably would have never have chosen to live in, which can be good or bad. But the good from it is again, you end up meeting people that you would have never met in another life.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You mentioned also that your original plan was to fly with Air Canada, I think you said. What ended up changing that to the military?
So it was actually Greg's current squadron, 424 squadron. I was doing OJT being on the job training. I was 2LT at that point, and a couple of the senior pilots had, they were trying to convince me to go one way or the other. I took a flight on the Griffin at the time, which was a ton of fun. And they're like, hey, well, we're on Slash, we're on the night shift for the C-130. If we get called out, do you want to come with us? And it was like kind of on cue. The phone rings, duty ops picked up, and they're like, hey, we got a SAR mission over Lake Ontario. We obviously have lots of space, so come on board. And I was stoked. I was super excited. So I jump on the Herc. And as I'm, kind of figuring out what the mission is all about, it turns out it was a Canadian Coast Guard vessel that I guess lost generators or something, and they were having troubles navigating to shore, and they couldn't really see the shoreline from where they were. So our mission was to essentially fly overhead, locate the boat, and stay overhead until they got close enough where they could just navigate themselves to the shoreline. That mission took 6 hours, and over the 6 hours, I endured some of the worst jokes that I have ever heard. And from that moment on, I was kind of like, okay, well, at least in a helicopter, max time I'll spend in a helicopter is 3 to 4 hours on average. You can land for breaks, and hopefully their jokes are a little bit better. So from that point on, I shifted gears to rotary wing, and yeah, SAR I got the SAR bug early after one of the helicopter flights in Trenton, and I haven't really looked back since.
Yeah. And switching gears and looking into the rotary world, I guess also meant taking a step away from that path to Air Canada as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always figured it might be possible in the future, but
sure.
To be honest, I don't know if that'll ever be in the cards. But for now, I still love and enjoy the job. So I have no intention of leaving anytime soon.
Yeah, I know it's possible for helicopter folks to get their licenses and end up flying airliners still. But it's funny because most of the helicopter people I know are like, that really doesn't appeal to me after flying helicopters. Like, I don't want to sit there for 8 hours straight and level on autopilot. And I kind of get that.
Yeah, for sure. But also as a helicopter pilot, we typically end up having some form of back or neck issue.
True.
So at some point down the road, I'm sure the straight and level autopilot and coffee or tea options isn't a bad thing either.
It is nice. So we mentioned in your bio that you went to Royal Military College, or RMC. What did life at RMC teach you about leadership before your first SAR mission?
I'd say RMC teaches you that leadership starts long before you're in charge of anything super important. And I'm not saying that being in charge of fellow cadets isn't that important, but it's kind of like the first stepping stone to develop a leader. You learn very, very quickly that leading by example is key. Getting to know your subordinates is super important, and being able to, depending on the role that you're in, being able to figure out who these people are and use their strengths to the advantage of, whether it's the squadron or a section is critical to success for a lot of people here. So yeah, and it's just it's about showing up prepared, owning mistakes, and learning that the group essentially succeeds or fails together. So it's a great starting place to kind of develop these leadership traits. And yeah,
because all that stuff you just described is like hugely applicable to operational flying as well.
Of course, yeah, it is.
You talk about having a whirlwind of on-the-job training, or OJT, at squadrons across the country and flying in many CAF aircraft. Where did you go?
So I spent a lot of time in Trenton, actually. 424 Squadron, 436 Squadron, 426. Spent some time in Comox as well, on the West Coast. And basically, if there was an aircraft that had room in it, I wanted to be on board to kind of figure out what life was like, what life was actually like in that position and with that community. And as towards the end of my OGT experience, having that one SAR mission that kind of made me take the other fork in the road to go the rotor wing side was critical turning point for me, and is the reason why I'm here today.
What was that mission?
It was the same mission we talked about.
The Coast Guard?
Yeah, the Coast Guard vessel, Lake Ontario, and the 6 hour, the 6 hours of really terrible pilot jokes.
Have you found the jokes are better in the rotary world? Or is there just not enough time to make the jokes?
I would say, I think I got to be honest. I think we do it better.
I don't know. Greg's shaking his head no.
The jokes aren't better. The community is different. The bond between the crew is definitely different, just because the proximity from the SAR Techs to the front end is so much closer than in the C-130. So yeah, different relationship. Still bad jokes.
Yeah.
Fair.
So you got into your flight training. What parts of pilot training challenged you the most?
I'd say the instrument flying was definitely new to me. When your body is screaming one thing and the instruments are telling you something else, the correct answer is, ignore your feelings and trust the instruments. Yeah, I found that a challenge initially, because my first instinct was always, I know what's happening, so, I'm going to do the right thing. It's kind of like following GPS every once in a while. I'm like, I know a shortcut, and then ends up not really being a shortcut at all.
For sure.
But and those lessons kind of come in handy later too, like both in aviation and life. Sometimes you have built-in instruments that help you along, and you kind of have to trust that sometimes that process works.
Yeah. The first time that you are disoriented in cloud, and you start to feel like, no, I'm definitely turning, and your attitude indicator is telling you you're straight and level, or vice versa. It's really, really uncomfortable, but you have to trust your instruments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How did you overcome those challenges? Is it just repetition?
Yeah, a lot of repetition, and obviously knowing that in the training system, the instructors are always there to help you towards success as long as you're putting in the work. And over time, realizing that whether it's instruments or other crew members that you're relying on, they're there to make things better, regardless of what it is.
Mm-hmm. When you got selected on the Cormorant, how excited were you?
I was super excited. I wasn't expecting it at all. To be honest, I was expecting to go back to Trenton to fly the Griffin. So it was a huge surprise. And my wife, being from the NCR, Elmer, Gatineau area, she was super happy to leave and visit another part of Canada. Obviously she loves it here, but she always wanted to travel as well before I met her. And with me, she's been able to travel quite a bit.
When you were selected for the Cormorant, what was the steepest part of the learning curve entering SAR flying?
Kind of like that, that initial intro to instrument flying. It was learning to take inputs from other crew members and like develop that bond, that trust, which, to be honest, happened very, very quickly. But it's a big aircraft, complex systems. I in general kind of know where my tail is, but it's 75 feet behind me. So it's, a big jump from the Bell 412 or the Bell 206.
Yeah, you talk about trust there. Like, how big of a part does trust play in SAR?
It is everything. Being able to trust crew members, being predictable is huge for the SAR community. It's not about just being skilled at what you're doing. It's also having every member on board believing in, not just your abilities, but their own, and using each other's strengths to accomplish the mission.
Yeah, like I think every community talks about teamwork and trust and those kinds of things, but I'm not sure I hear any community talk about it as much and as importantly as search and rescue.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever listened to kind of the intercom dance that we play on board the Cormorant, or probably on board any SAR helicopter, when you're in a confined area or boat hoisting or doing something challenging that requires every crew position to have a critical piece of information for the pilot flying, it's super important.
Yeah. So in your early operational flying in Comox, what shaped your philosophy as a SAR pilot?
It was just the first couple SAR missions on the Cormorant were, some of them were missions I'll never forget, but you're kind of overwhelmed because you're super excited. You're on a SAR mission. Sometimes you kind of forget what you're doing. I think the very first SAR mission, I flamed out an engine because I didn't turn a fuel valve on. But very quickly you realize, like, hey, it's no different than training. Going through things smoothly and efficiently is important. Speed isn't necessarily as important, especially to start. But I quickly realized that as a SAR pilot, whether it's first officer or aircraft commander, knowing your limits, your abilities, your personal abilities, your personal limits, those limits of the aircraft are obviously super important. But as we conduct SAR, you can't necessarily train for every circumstance. So when you're conducting something, having kind of those arcs and knowing how to efficiently work within them is super important. And I've always kind of maintained that since my upgrade in Comox as aircraft commander, and then moving on to different locations.
Did you find it difficult at first to manage the intense emotions that can come up during search and rescue work? Or it's always a question I'm interested in asking when I speak with SAR crews, because I can only imagine it would be really easy, if you're not careful, to let the intensity or the urgency of the situation affect you.
Absolutely. Like, I could always go back to my first mission where I flamed out an engine, on the first start. I kind of let the adrenaline and the excitement get the best of me and started forgetting things, thinking that I had to be super fast, and once I got over that hump, it's, you'll encounter missions where it can be pretty emotionally draining, especially if there's, children involved or the end result wasn't desirable. Then it definitely weighs on you as a human being and as a pilot. But it's also super important to realize that, a lot of times when we get called out, we are the last, not that we're the last resort, but we're kind of like the last hopes for certain folks or certain missions to even have a chance of success. And not every mission can be successful, but just the fact that we are out there and we're doing absolutely everything we can is super important, especially to those family members who are looking for that closure, or, just knowing that you are out there doing absolutely everything you possibly can, even if the conditions are not favoring a positive outcome.
How do you deal with that if you do have one that, let's say worst case, say, involves a child and it takes an emotional toll on you? How do you process that and deal with that after?
It's different for everybody. There's I'll back it up a little bit. I'd say in the past, depending on the community, there may have been a sense of, you're a first responder, you're a SAR pilot, or you're a SAR air crew. You just have to be able to deal with it and move on, because that's your job. And if you can't do it, nobody else is going to do it. And I think at the time it was, while probably available, it was, that mental health aspect that, R2MR is something that has become more readily available for SAR crews in the recent years.
R2MR stands for Road to Mental Readiness, and it is a performance and mental health training and education program developed by the Canadian Forces.
Being resilient, being aware of the help and the resources that are out there is huge, because at the end of the day, your level of stress and somebody in a completely different field may be equal, but chances are you are exposed to things that most people never see and to be honest, never want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to be able to use these resources to ensure that we are fit to fly. We're always on our A game, because you never know when you're that one SAR mission that seemed like it could be a routine one turns into the most difficult SAR mission of the year.
Yeah. Greg, obviously you SAR techs are face to face with a lot of tough situations. How do you deal with the emotional side of that?
I think pausing and staying mission focused helps to understand the best outcome for the patient. Is not me being worried about what's going to happen to me, or worried about the pilot's job or the flight engineer's job. I'm worried about me and the other SAR tech, and then getting the patients to the best level of care as fast as possible in the safest manner possible.
Yeah, that helps during the moment. What about after the mission? When, if you're thinking about it at home, how do you deal with it if it's been a tough one?
I think you just play it back in your head and then try to figure out where you can improve to learn from your mistakes. If you felt like you made mistakes, I mean, sometimes you're probably always going to feel like you made a mistake or could have done something better, maybe not a mistake, but realizing that the outcome's the outcome. Regardless, the person got themselves in trouble or the incident happened and you didn't put them in that spot.
Mm-hmm.
You're there to provide assistance. So the best you can. We learned that early on. I think when we ride in the paramedic program at the beginning, you kind of learn that from the seasoned paramedic crews that drive around all day picking people up in ambulance.
Yeah.
They've seen that for a lot of years and they kind of teach that early. Hey, we're here to help somebody and it's their emergency. We can't make it our emergency. We got to make sure we return them to safety, but we also need to return so we can rescue another person in another day. So if we're not mitigating risk and we're being a bit of a cowboys, then there could be a chance that we don't go back and we don't make it home. So how are we going to help the next person if we don't pay attention to what we're doing?
For sure. Okay, so we're going to talk quickly about CIFMAP, or the Canadian Forces Member Assistance Program. This program is for regular force members, reserves who are on duty during an incident, and parents and siblings of CAF regular and reserve force members who are injured or who die while in service. The program provides direct access to telephone counseling services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. From my own personal experience, you can call or use their online chat feature to make an appointment. They then set you up with a professional, and I believe you get 10 free mental health sessions. For more details, I highly encourage you to Google CIFMAP, that's CFMAP, and click on the canada.ca link. The beauty of this program is it's free and confidential, so no one in the CAF will know you used it, not your supervisor or chain of command, and not your doctor. I don't say that to encourage people hiding their conditions from their doctor. I personally think it's important to be open with your doctor about what you're going through, but if you're afraid to ask for help, it's a great way to dip your toes in the water confidentially. So how do you contact them? Listen closely, everyone. Take out your phone and save this number because you or someone you love may need it one day. The number is 1-800-268-7708. Again, that's 1-800-268-7708. And now, on with the show. So, Pete, do you have an early training moment where things didn't go to plan and it taught you something that was a lasting lesson?
Yeah, I feel like any pilot in the RCF will have many scenarios where it didn't go as planned, and I think I think some of the most valuable moments are when the plan falls apart super early, and you're able to kind of reset and adapt, and basically use everything you have and come up with a new one on the fly, and that's pretty much kind of what SAR teaches you is stubbornly sticking to a bad plan is probably worse than stopping and coming up with a new one to push forward and come out with a successful outcome.
Yeah, the more SAR aircrew that I talk to, the more I'm learning that SAR is all about constantly adapting to new conditions, making a new plan that makes sense, creative thinking, uh, constantly working against like constraints and how to get around those and how to keep everybody safe. Like it's been very interesting to learn about that mindset.
Yeah, it's there's a touch of it there, just being a pilot in general, but it definitely in the SAR world ends up becoming crucial when it comes to holding SAR standby and even just planning a training day for a SAR crew. You can come up with the best plan in the world, and whether it's the weather doesn't permit it, or you have a snag on the aircraft, or you get called out mid training evolution, it's kind of like, okay, time to giddy up, let's get things rolling and switch gears and get the job done.
Yeah. You became an instructor pilot and instrument check pilot. How did teaching refine your own skills and decision making?
Quite a few things. I find teaching kind of forces a little bit of honesty. You can't hide behind this is how I do it, because when somebody asks why, you have to know what you're talking about, know what you're teaching. It makes you sharper, and it also teaches you to allow for people to, as long as they're not breaking any rules and the outcome is successful, it also teaches you that there isn't just one way to do something. There's 100 different ways you can execute a SAR mission, and 99 of them can be successful. And just being okay with things aren't necessarily going the way you would have done it, but it was still safe and effective, and I think that's super important.
And a challenging skill too, right? Because our natural inclination is like, well, that's not how I would have done it. Hey, have you thought about trying this? But like, if that person is being successful, like you said, safe and effective, then maybe their way is okay too.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the best SAR pilots I've seen out there, they'll often take strengths from different people, and over time, by the time they get to their AC check ride, you can kind of see like, oh, he kind of took this technique from this individual, and he learned this on this mission, and it's amazing to watch people kind of develop and grow into mature SAR aircraft commanders.
Cool.
Because at the end of the day, it is a ton of responsibility resting on your shoulders when you sign out an aircraft.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. So you were posted to 103 Squadron in Gander, where you were exposed to East Coast weather. What difference did those experiences make in how you approached flying?
It taught me respect. Newfoundland weather is the weather doesn't care about your rank, your schedule, your confidence level, your abilities. It rewards essentially, like preparation, humility, and good crew coordination at the end of the day. And it pretty much punishes everything else. So, you could think you're the best pilot in the world, and that weather will stop you in your tracks. It is, and the weather on the East Coast at times, you see the forecast, you're like, hey, it's actually not that bad, and you get there and it's near 0, and you're kind of like, okay, time for a new plan. This is not going to work out well. It's just a totally different vibe from my couple years of flying in Comox, and definitely more extremes and longer range missions as well. So you might go through pretty much 4 different seasons en route to a SAR case by the time you get there, and by the time you're ready to go home, all of those scenarios may have changed for better or worse.
Yeah, it sounds like it's pretty wild out there.
It can be, for sure.
So you were selected to do an exchange posting down in Cape Cod with the U.S. Coast Guard. What training and operational philosophies did you bring home from your time flying the MH-60T Jayhawk in Cape Cod that were different from the Canadian approach?
The Americans were phenomenal down there. They're very welcoming. The Jayhawk is also a very, very capable helicopter. My time down there reinforced the fact that even though you can have the same job or the same role and want the same outcome, the way you got there could be completely different. And at times I found myself flying the Jayhawk, mid hoist, and it felt like I was flying a Cormorant. I could swear it was a flight engineer in the back with a couple SAR techs. And then whether it was a checklist item or, terminology would come up, and I was like, oh, right, I'm not in Canada anymore. This is the US Coast Guard. I have to do it this way first. I found that was very, very interesting. But it reinforced the fact that you can do something many different ways and still be very, very successful.
Did you find there was anything that they did in a certain way that when you came back to Canada, you were like, hey guys, the US does it this way. Have we ever thought about this?
It's I think the overall experience and learning how to deal with different crew personalities, coming back to Canada, it was very, very helpful. I think it helped me mature as a SAR aircraft commander. I think as a Canadian SAR pilot or Canadian SAR crew, I think we do things very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously never perfect. And if I feel like if you ever stop learning, then something's wrong. But for the most part, I found we did things very, very well. I'd say one item that was different with them, they often have a lot of slack in their hoist cable when doing heavy seas hoisting. And this came up a little bit during the Atlantic Destiny case a few years ago, where that slack allowed for, the big sea state to be easily absorbed within that cable slack and kind of prevented snags or from the flight engineer or the flight mechanic in the US Coast Guard's crew from having to make too many adjustments with how much cable is paid out. So that was I think one key difference that as a Canadian kind of took home, and it sounds like depending on the circumstance or the SAR mission, our flight engineers have also kind of adapted when the scenario makes sense.
Cool. Starting in 2024, you led 103 SAR Squadron, the busiest operational SAR squadron in the country. How did that leadership experience prepare you for the MSC Baltic III rescue?
To be honest, I don't think there was much more that could prepare me for the MSC Baltic. Having command of the squadron kind of teaches you trust is important. It teaches you that you have, 100 different personalities serving under you, all wanting to do good things. But it's quite often the small things, the small details that really matter. That matter to the members, that matter to the overall squadron morale. And being able to adapt, admit mistakes, and being able to push forward is super important. And I guess that would translate to the MSC Baltic in that, it taught you to trust the abilities of everybody. Just because you're the aircraft commander doesn't mean what's best for the SAR Tech or the flight engineer. And using everybody's strengths to bring you to that successful conclusion of the mission is what it's all about. I think that was the biggest kind of anything to prepare me was exactly that. Just trusting your subject matter experts and making sure that the decisions that you're coming up with make sense and you have the best chance of accomplishing the mission in a successful manner, safe and a successful manner, and bringing everybody home safe at the end of the day.
Which is huge, right? Like that's like the big skill that any aircraft commander needs is trusting your subject matter experts. Like you have a whole aircraft full of people who are expertly trained and know their job. And it's not your job to you got to know what what everyone's job is to an extent, but they're the ones who are the experts. They're the ones who are going to feed you all that information and help you to have everything you need to make the right decisions.
Absolutely. And then, we have as you probably already know, we have our annual maritime extraction exercise that we have kind of nicknamed Boat Camp. And, these annual events are a chance for 103 Squadron to get together and really nail down like, hey, this is our baseline level of trust. And, the skills may or may not be there. We may have new members from the West Coast or another squadron. And that's our chance to kind of get the reps in a concentrated format with some sea state, with various vessels, and really nail down what works and what doesn't, and give our crews a chance to experiment as well with different techniques. And the procedures are all pretty much the same, but sometimes there are different techniques on finding better references on a boat, or for flight engineers to kind of con the aircraft in, and kind of how that transpires to a smooth and successful boat hoist.
Awesome. So we're going to shift gears here and talk to Greg about his training as a SAR Tech. But before we go through that, let's go through Greg's bio. Warrant Officer Gregory Hudson was born in Calgary, Alberta in 1983 and enrolled in the Canadian Armed Forces in 2004. He began his career as a combat engineer, deploying to the Zari district of Afghanistan in 2008, an experience that shaped his resilience, leadership, and commitment to service. Following his tour, Greg pursued advanced qualifications including the Combat Diver Course, Helicopter Insertion Instructor Course, and Static Line Parachute Course. In 2014, he was selected for the Elite Search and Rescue Technician, or SAR Tech occupation, and graduated from SAR Tech Course 48 in 2015. His first posting was to 413 Squadron in Greenwood, Nova Scotia, where he began his operational SAR career. He later moved to 424 Transport and Rescue Squadron in Trenton, Ontario, serving as a team leader and contributing in medical, dive, training, and standards roles. In 2022, he was posted to 103 SAR Squadron in Gander as Deputy SAR Tech Lead and Chief Check. Promoted to Warrant Officer in 2023, he became SAR Tech Lead at one of the busiest rescue units in the RCAF. Over his career, Greg has accumulated more than 2,000 flying hours on the C-130H, C-130J, CH-146, and CH-149, completed over 500 SAR parachute jumps, and helped save the lives of countless Canadians across the country. He is currently posted to 424 Transport and Rescue Squadron in Trenton, Ontario. Greg has been married for 19 years and is the proud father of 2 children. So, Greg, what first drew you to military service and the combat engineers?
Well, I was post 9/11, and some of my buddies and I talked about joining the military when I was living in Calgary, and we never did. And then I moved to Ottawa. My parents were born there, so they moved back after my grandfather passed away. My mom wanted to be closer to family, and then I stayed in Calgary by myself for a little bit, and then I decided to join them. So when I went back, when I went to Ottawa, I didn't speak French because I grew up in Calgary. Jobs weren't that great. I just had done high school. I didn't have a lot of post-secondary options. I was going to go back to school, and then I thought I had to pay for that. So let's try something else. I joined the military and never looked back.
Awesome. You ended up serving in Afghanistan. You mentioned you joined post 9/11. So that was obviously a big reality for anyone, especially who joined the combat arms. How did your Afghanistan deployment shape you as a person and as an operator?
I think it helped to build my mental toughness, and I realized how much you can accomplish as a team, and that it's not about you. It's about the people next to you, left and right of you, are the ones that you really depend on, and they depend on you. So building that, I think that was a great opportunity to learn how to rely on other people.
Did you have any experiences there that would like foreshadow that one day you would be a SAR Tech? Was there anything that kind of shaped you there?
Not really. I did TCCC before I deployed.
TCCC is Tactical Combat Casualty Care.
I also did a search course down in the States. Went down to St. Louis and did a search course there, which was more building searches and looking for hidden weapons and IEDs and stuff like that in a U.S. facility that was quite advanced. So I don't know, maybe that led me to want to be, search and rescue. That's probably what I say I did the most in Afghanistan was search for things, search for bombs, search for IEDs, clear routes, and then TCCC was kind of the next job. So the combat casualty care. And that kind of got me a little bit started in medicine. I didn't know how much I'd like it until I kind of got into SAR more, but yeah, that was a little exposure at least.
Do you think that staying cool under pressure, like I got to imagine searching for bombs is a pretty harrowing experience. Do you think that trying to stay calm in those situations has helped you now as a SAR Tech when you're staying calm in operational situations?
Yeah, I'm sure it did. I'd always, even back then, I knew I was more worried about my other section members when they had to go forward with the metal detector and look on a route that we had already previously discussed was going to be a high hazard route or a suspected area because there had been previous IEDs planted there. So I was always more worried about them than myself, and I think that translates into SAR pretty well. I'm always more worried about the rest of my crew, my team members, or the people that we're going to provide care for than what the risk is to me, understanding the risk, but not putting it at the front of my brain and not fogging my decision-making on something that's not affecting me at the current moment.
Wow. Yeah, I can't, honestly, I can't imagine doing that kind of work. My hat's off to you guys for the work you did over there. Anyone who was on the ground there, well, anyone who went there in general, but anyone especially who was on the ground there in a combat arms role, I have huge respect for. So, I hate saying that the cliche, but thank you for your service over there.
Well, my pleasure.
Following your deployment, you completed training as a combat diver, heli insertion instructor, and in static line parachuting. What did each discipline teach you?
Paying attention to detail, like attention to fine details, and then depending on the person next to you, everything. Combat diving, you're getting safety checked by your buddy and a supervisor, and then when you're underwater, that buddy is your lifeline to the surface. And then, static line parachute jumping, you're getting checked by a parachute rigger, by a jump master. Someone else is picking the spot. Like when you're a brand new jumper, someone else picks the spot where you get out of the plane. They trained you on the ground what to do, and then the first time you jump out of a plane, you're kind of on your own. So you really rely on those systems that are already in place with everyone else checking on each other and paying attention to detail. I think is very key.
What's that like to know that your life and safety are in the hands of someone else and depending on their attention to detail?
I think that we have a great training program in the Canadian Forces for all the different things. Helicopter insertion course I did, the combat diver course, the static line course, all those things. If you just see how much detail is into the preparation, like Pete was talking about, being an instructor, you got to know what you're talking about. You're not just going in and making things off of your experience. You're just following the publications and the procedures that have been put in place for very good reasons. And I think that you learn to trust that over time. And like you said before, after you pull a couple IEDs out of the ground and maybe parachuting out of airplanes, not as scary as it once seemed, right?
Yeah, that's fair. What inspired you to take on the challenge of SAR Tech selection in 2014?
Well, I was posted to Petawawa, so lots of camps off up in that area with CSOR and the JTF down the street. So a lot of my buddies were trying to move on to that pasture to see what that was about, and kind of gave that a thought. And then I kind of stepped back and realized I wanted to be there for my family, for one thing, and then also to give back to the Canadians. I thought was a great opportunity, instead of realizing I'd be going over to another country, still providing security for Canada, but I could actually affect Canadians in Canada. And I thought that was a great opportunity to give back to the country that's given me so much.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting, the parallels and the differences between like special operations and SAR Techs. Like obviously there's a lot of shared DNA in the selection process and the skills involved. The end product is something very different, but there's a lot of similarities there as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Can you walk us through a moment in selection where you weren't sure you'd make it and what kept you going?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm not sure if I ever had a spot where I didn't think I'd make it. Probably things I could do better. Like I said before, I debriefed myself at the end of the day. I felt I was quite ready. I've been training for years with all the different courses I'd done. My training started very, very long before I even knew what a SAR Tech was. I was training for something I didn't even know about. I had a solid resume, felt pretty confident going in. Physical fitness was top priority for me. It's kind of the only thing you can actually train for is, the PT test, and the selection is going to be grueling from a physical standpoint. So, spending 9 months in Afghanistan carrying heavy packs through the desert is different than carrying heavy packs through the snowy terrain of Alberta, but still carrying a heavy pack. So I thought I was pretty ready for that. I mean, there were some moments definitely where I could reflect back and wish I would have done something different. But all in all, I was fairly confident from my previous training that the Army had given me.
Yeah, everyone has those moments too, right? In life, in training, whatever. Like, we're all doing our best, but you're always going to have moments where you look back and think, well, I could have done this different. I could have done this better. And that's just part of learning and becoming a better person, a better professional in whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I agree.
Once you had completed selection, which portion of the SAR Tech course do you think pushed you the hardest?
I think probably the medical portion, just that was what I had least exposure to, besides CCCC, which is just a little bit of a glimpse into medicine. It's not a full paramedic program. And I had 2 young kids, and my son was 5 months old when we went to Comox. And I took my whole family. I took my wife and my 2 kids. We drove across the country and rented a condo in Comox. And the kids were living down the road from the base with my wife, and I was driving to the base every morning to do PT with the course and start medical training till 4 or 5 o'clock at night. And then I'd drive home at the end of the day, and I'd had to be a dad, be a husband, spend family time, get the kids ready for bed, support my wife who'd been doing that all by herself all day long, and then get everyone set up for the nighttime routine. And then once everyone went to bed, 9 o'clock at night, I'd stay up and study for another hour or 2, depending on what was going on the next day. And then I'd, hit bed at, 11 o'clock at night and be up next morning, 5:30 to do it again. And it was a different thing, right? Medicine, more detailed, having to learn anatomy and physiology and all the stuff that goes along with that. I already had parachuted, already had scuba dived, I'd spent time in the snow, in the Arctic, in the Army, been in helicopters, rappelling, mountaineering and stuff like that in the engineers. So I thought that that stuff came, I already had a little exposure to it. As SAR, definitely I got leveled up. But yeah, in the Army, I had exposure to all that stuff where the medicine was very new to me.
Yeah, not to mention, well, you did mention, but that sounds so difficult to do all that stuff and then to still have to go home, be a dad, be a husband, balancing your personal and professional life. But I guess if you think about it, like, it's not like that's going to be your career, right? Like, you're going to be working hard, you're going to be training hard, and you're still going to be a husband and father. So you got to find a way to balance all that.
Yeah, there's great advantages to it too. We got to the pediatric portion of the medical course. I had 2 young kids at home. Guys that had never had a kid, I got a 5-month at home. Well, I know how to, if they're choking, what to do. I know how to pick them up and roll them around. I know how to swaddle them. I know how to do all that stuff. I got a 4-year-old daughter running around the house getting bumps and bruises. So I knew how to get down to her level, kneel down, talk to her, look in her eyes, assess if she's really hurt or not hurt, sick or not sick. I had a wife too that I could, hey, let me practice giving you an IV. You're harder to get an IV on than my buddy whose veins are pumping because they're working out a couple times a day and they're fit SAR techs. And I got to try to find a vein on this, a light-skinned female with these small little veins and at least do, other assessments. And so it was nice to have them at home, right? I could, hey, I want to run some training. I want to practice approaching a patient and assessing them. So my wife could lay on the couch and I could walk up and, hey, are you okay? And kind of go through that patient assessment model. So the practical side of things really helped that way. And like I said, studying the books was just something you got to do. But it was nice to have them in there. And that my wife and I joke around, like, that was the most time we'd ever been together consistently. Because on that part of the SAR course, you go home, you go to school. It's Monday to Friday. You go home every day, every night. You get to go home and sleep in your own bed.
Yep.
So, and then once you start to do the Arctic ops and parachute stuff, you go down and deploy to other locations. So you're not seeing your family. But being in the Army before that's the most consistent I'd been home back to back in my whole time being married with my wife.
Yeah, people forget that like schools can be tough for various reasons. Whether you're an instructor or a student, they may not be like, a lot of people who are instructing, they want to be operational still. Students, like, they think about school, it's going to be high pressure, but it's also going to be one of the times in your career where you actually have a predictable, stable, relatively Monday to Friday job.
Yeah, and we had a great staff at SIFSAR and Comox that they could stay after hours and run us through anything we had questions about. They would send you home with homework so you could have stuff to look up. And on the Saturday or Sunday, if you wanted to come in and do any training, whether hands-on equipment or review procedure or protocol, they were always available to come help. So if you said, I need some assistance, and we had a couple solid guys on my course from course 48, a couple ex-medics and doctors as people that were really able to help and explain it more than one way, right? The staff was great at doing that, but not everyone learns the same. So another point of view is always great, and someone from the ground level who's done it before is very helpful.
Yeah. So you ended up completing SAR Course 48 in 2015 and were then posted to Greenwood. What surprised you the most about your first tour as a SAR Tech?
I'd say that what most surprised me when I got to Greenwood was the lack of allocated time for physical fitness. We had to really get allocated time for SAR flying, YFR requirements and currencies, but you had to be fit to become a SAR Tech. And then it just seems like when you got to the units, it was left to your own devices to maintain that fitness. So the gym in Greenwood was a phenomenal, I'd say one of the best in the SAR bases for sure across the country. So, and it wasn't always like that. I think Dylan Weller was a good advocate for increasing the size, the footprint, and the equipment in the gym. But having a culture of people that wanted to work out and wanted to be in the gym was great, and it always has been at the SAR bases. It's just finding the time in the day and trying to make sure an email or reading a publication is not more important than your own physical and mental health.
For sure. And I think that's something that most physical fitness minded members run into once they're at a big base. It is difficult to find the time and make the time to stay fit. Obviously, it's a lot more of a life and death part of your life with what you do. That being fit isn't just about being healthy; it's also about being effective and staying alive with the work you do. But I think that's something that is a common worry amongst people who want to try to stay fit.
Yeah, you just was in Petawawa before, so I mean the gym in Petawawa, and same with Edmonton and Valcartier, the army-based gyms in Gagetown, they're like Olympic-style gyms, right? They've got massive field houses with fitness equipment sprawling across a massive footprint. And you go to the Air Force bases, and they're a bit smaller. So having those gyms at the SAR squadrons where you're on standby, you can load the helicopter or the C-130 and then go to the gym for 40 minutes and then get dressed and go do a flight, go do a brief, and then go fly. Or the pilots stop by where you're in the gym and make a plan for the day. I think that's a huge benefit that the SAR community has, the gym right integrated into the units, and you're not trying to go to the base gym from time to time. You can use them, but I think that's huge to keep people physically and mentally healthy.
Without a doubt, absolutely. So in Trenton, you worked in medical, dive, training, and standards roles. Which had the biggest impact on who you are today?
I think training section definitely did. All the other sections I think have a great impact on the shop, but on my personal outlook on how things get done, I think training did. I learned a lot about contracting and dealing with outside agencies. When you're in medical section, you're dealing with the team in medical section and maybe the pharmacy and some other outside resources. But when you're in training, you really feel like you're trying just with everybody. You're talking to the Herc flight commander, or the Griffin flight commander, the OPSO. You're just organizing. So you're talking to the admino to figure out how to pay for things. You want to set training up. It's contracting or finding locations, hotels, rental vehicles. The logistics of it is just, I think, so much above and beyond the other sections that you learn how to be a logistics guru that you didn't expect that you're going to do when you join SAR. That you'd have so much administration and logistics, but it's what you need to do to get the quality training and the job done.
Mm-hmm. As a team leader and SAR Tech lead, how did your philosophy of readiness evolve beyond when you were just a team member?
I think when you're a team member, you're focused on being good at your skills as a team member. Like, can I tie this interlocking bow line quickly? Can I do this properly? Can I make sure my parachute, my jump master checks are done properly? Can I do this? And then as a team leader or as a SDL, you're making sure everyone else has that. So you're kind of looking on other people. So maintaining your skills and then making sure that you're providing them the opportunity to grow and develop their skills.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you describe an early career mission or training event that tested your judgment under pressure?
Yeah, I talked about this one before on another podcast actually, and it says we did a mission. I think it was probably my first mission, one of my first in Greenwood. I was a third man, so we normally fly two SAR Techs, and I was the third under training. And we went on a cruise ship out in the middle of the ocean. It was a hot day, but we got to be in our dry suits. So I'm buttoned up right into my dry suit. I'm dripping sweat all over the place. I'm doing all the work because I'm the new guy. So they're kind of like giving me the opportunity to learn and do stuff. And kind of like, so I'm carrying more gear. I'm like, got to go check on the patient. They got a plan. They, get down to the deck of the boat. I bring the guideline in, the basket in, the gear in, and I'm kind of cleaning it up, like getting it ready so I can go and assess the patient. And one of the cruise ship workers looks at me and then sees the sweat just pouring off my face and asks me if I need a towel. And I just kind of like had to hold back from like just telling them off basically to be like, get out, don't even talk to me right now. And I had to take a break to be like, no, I'm good. Thanks. No, like, and they're looking at the bar on the cruise ship filled with drinks, and they're just like sitting there having a great time. And we're out there sweating to death. And I think I, dumped almost a liter of sweat out of my dry suit at the end of the day when we got home. Sopping wet, everything was soaked because we were out in the middle of the Atlantic, so we need to be dressed up for the water. But the weather up in the helicopter's warm. We're above the clouds. The sun's beaming through the bubble windows. Is kind of like a magnifying glass in that helicopter when the sun's beaming in it. So that was pretty uncomfortable. But over the years, we've kind of become accustomed to it with cold weather and hot weather exposure that we put ourselves through constantly in the SAR crews.
Man, that sounds brutal. You have made more than 500 jumps. Does the job ever become routine, or does it feel different every time?
Yeah, I think it still feels different every time. I don't think you can let it become routine. You stay mission focused. I think the risk of a training jump is a fact. Like every day we fly on the C-130, we're going to do 1 to 2 jumps minimum, and you can't just let those be benign ever. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. You're moving 130 knots over the ground at, say relatively low altitudes. 2,000 feet's our jump minimum. So for training. So, and you've got another team member on board, maybe 2, maybe 3 people that you're taking care of from a team leader perspective. You're making sure everything's, so you're always watching yourself, and, you 2 people on board, you got to back each other up, but you got to make sure that your equipment and your procedures are ready and dialed in too, so that you're not relying on that person to catch all your mistakes. You're relying on that person to catch the anomaly mistake that might happen, or someone's tangled in a comms wire on their foot, or something on their parachute slowly came undone or got caught on a seat or something, and you're turning. That you want them to see those hazards, and if you're absolutely neglectful, then I think those hazards just amplify immensely.
Mm-hmm. So as we get ready to talk about the Baltic rescue in episode 2, I'd like to talk about some of the philosophies that kind of go into SAR and preparing you for a mission like that. What does true SAR teamwork mean to each of you, and why is it critical on days like February 15th, 2025?
I think Pete said it earlier, trust. Knowing everyone knows their job, and you trust people to do their job, and you understand the aspects of their job, but not their job. And you got to let them manage that piece. I think as you grow and develop as a team leader, as an AC, you understand what other people's jobs more and more are. But for the team member to understand what the pilot's doing up front, I don't think that's necessary. He needs to understand that pilot's got the helicopter, and he's got us, and he's gonna take care of us, take us to the mission, and bring us home safely.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I'd also add in there predictability and having that one standard across the board, whether you're flying in Gander, Greenwood, or Comox. A SAR AC for the most part is going to be exactly that, a SAR AC. Somebody from Comox maybe a little more familiar with flying in the mountains, for example. So that's where you could expect a little more exposure and experience, and someone who's a little more comfortable flying in the hills. But the opposite would be in Greenwood or Gander, flying 200-300 miles offshore, or doing a significant transit through some pretty significant weather systems, and transiting 9 hours to do a search and or a very challenging boat hoist, and then having to transit another 3 or 4 hours back to the nearest point of land to do a patient transfer. So the SAR teamwork is knowing what you're going to get as a standard, truly trying to know your crew members. So as a SAR EC, it was really important for me to not just know crew positions, but to know who I'm flying with, and as your exposure and your trust kind of builds, when the time really matters, there are no questions. It's, this is what we're doing and everybody's on board. Yep, cool. And, you continue, you push forward.
Looking back across your careers, do you have any moments or missions that were essential preparation for the Baltic III rescue?
So at the end of the day, like, the Baltic was a mission that was very different than the 200 plus other ones that I've done, in that it incorporated a little bit of everything. It had the difficulty level of just getting on scene. It had the challenging boat hoist to a boat that, despite being grounded, wasn't stable. It had the just the sheer number of sailors that we're bringing on board, which wasn't necessarily the plan from the get-go, but being able to adapt as the mission kind of unfolded in front of us was key. And all the training evolutions we've done in the past are little snippets of the MSC Baltic in general, and I'd say for that mission specifically, every single crew position was used to the full extent. SAR Tech's flight engineers, flying pilot, non-flying pilot, everybody was busy and everybody played a critical role in making sure that mission went as smoothly and as safely as it could be, given the conditions of the day.
Yeah, I'd agree with what Pete said. Relentless training. We not trained in those exact weather conditions, but we're flying in and out of Newfoundland, out of Gander, out of St. John's. The weather has always been low visibility, windy, gusty weather. So by taking the machine out and training in those environments, you're ready for the mission when it comes. So building realistic missions, training missions that simulate what we'd be doing for real. And I think on boat camp, I don't know if it was that year, maybe the year before, we did a ferry, one of the ferries at a large vessel, and we went to hoist down to that. And they didn't have 20 people on board, but it still had 7 casualties on the deck that we all triaged and went through and started to talk as a team how to pack them up and how to move them. We didn't put them back all on the Cormorant, but we had the ability to go down there and talk about it and say, okay, how do we do this? How do we do that? And just kind of always talking and sharing the missions that you've done and the training that you've done with each other, because not everyone can be on every mission, not everyone can be on every training flight. So spreading that knowledge around and then just continuing to spend your days training and not waste the daylight and just fly around and look at sightsee, go train and do the job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think the other part of training, whether you're in Comox, Greenwood, or Gander, I found you weren't just training to, check off a currency and, okay, you're good for another 30 or 90 days, or, you're good for this semi-annual requirement. A lot of folks really took it to heart, and, it might be a simple hoist, and maybe you hold a fairly stable hover to the point where the flight engineer doesn't have to say much to you, but, it still means you're drifting a foot or two left, right, up, down, and being able to kind of say, okay, well, I can hold it within this 2-foot box. It means I can probably do better. Like let's try and bring that down to a couple inches.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be impossible to be perfect, but you're always striving for better. You're always striving to challenge yourself to make things harder, so that when the time comes and you gotta the skill needs to take over to get yourself and the crew out of a challenging scenario. You're kind of sprung loaded and prepared to do it.
Right on. So how do you improve SAR, whether that's skills, procedures, equipment, or culture?
I think pushing training to the max. And Pete said it before, leading from the front, right? We're leading, we're showing the troops how to do it, what we're doing in the back from a SAR Tech's perspective. We need to, I can't expect someone to do something I'm not willing to do or not able to do. And then make sure we push the training so that we sweat in the training so we don't bleed in the reel. I don't think you can train too hard for a job that can kill you. So making sure you're, like Pete said, Mother Nature is relentless. So you're not going to fight. We're not going to win that fight. So you have to make sure you're attacking from the other angles and have your skills and your SOPs and your communication and all the other factors are dialed in so that when something goes awry or something changes, you're able to adapt quickly and it's not the end of a mission or turns everyone into like a sour day.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd Greg hit the nail on the head there. The training, absolutely honest debriefs, and a culture where everyone on the crew, not just that they can speak up, they feel comfortable to speak up and give you the feedback that ultimately will one day either save your life or somebody on the crew. And I think the other a unique perspective, as a SAR AC, I wasn't an aircraft commander at the time of this mission, but upgraded shortly or qualified as an AC shortly afterwards. But in the role of the commanding officer for the squadron as well, was to encourage my leads, and Greg was my SAR Tech lead and did a phenomenal job. Was to encourage my leads to come up with things that I need to support. And whether that was training that was slightly outside of the standard template, or essentially finding ways to improve ourselves and make ourselves more efficient, make ourselves more effective. That was the goal. So it was kind of a unique position where I didn't have just the role of a SAR aircraft commander, but as the CO, I was trying to balance the needs of the squadron and our air crew with all the other competing priorities as well.
Okay. So as you think back to everything prior to 2025, did either of you ever envision facing a mission of this magnitude?
I think in the back of our heads, we always know that there's a possibility, like the next SAR call out could be the big one.
Yeah.
It could be the SAR mission of the year, or it could be uber challenging. But it's never one of those, even the most benign calls. Every once in a while, you think, this is super simple. We're going to go out there, do a quick little hoist and come home. No big deal. And then, 7 hours later, and multiple attempts, you realize that the game has changed quite a bit, and what you thought was the case was totally different, right? So I think that's the amazing part about conducting SAR is no two SAR missions are really alike. And your main goal is to use all your strengths and take everything that all the tools that you've accumulated over your experience in SAR, and making that work for you in that moment.
Yeah, I think from the SAR Tech's perspective, we do a lot of training in the initial SAR course from MCI. So mass casualty incidents is something we've always been focused on. And we've got procedures and protocols to put in place for that. And so as a brand new SAR Tech, it's kind of like your final graduation. Before you graduate course, the final ops, they'll do an MCI event where we'll parachute in, all your whole course, say 11 or 12 of you, whatever your course size is, you all parachute into an area near Jarvis Lake, and they'll have 30, 40 people dressed up, moulaged up and pretending to be injured. And you go through the sequence of triage, move and treat and transport them and get them off the point of injury to a casualty collection point and start to treat them there and then move them onto helicopters or back through vehicles. And we practice this kind of day, like I say, at the very end of your SAR course, you learn about it throughout the medical phase, and then you do some small training and you do a big final, like, exercise at the end of the course. And then when you get to your units, that's probably like an annual exercise that we're running. Deer Lake, which is our lands. So Pete mentioned the boat camp, which is our marine extraction. And then we have a Deer Lake exercise, which is our land extraction. So you're always going to have medical scenarios with what we call, an MCI, where you have more patients than care providers or more equipment is required than what you have. So you're always in that spot where we're trying to overwhelm the care provider. I think that training like that is a key to get the SAR techs ready for stuff like this. We had a plane when we were in Deer Lake one year. There was a plane landing in St. John's called with an emergency landing gear problems. 44 people on board. The call came in. The crew was at the airport getting ready to go do their training, so they stopped and got gas. They called in. They called me on the phone and told me what was going on. I jumped in the truck with another SAR tech. We were 15 minutes away from the airport. As we were driving to the airport, we passed another 2 SAR techs as a whole squadron deploys to that area who were on a run because they were on the night crew. So they were on a run that morning, just doing a little PT. So we passed them. I rolled on the windows. I told them this is the information I had. I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. If they can go back to their cabin, get their stuff ready, because we might need another crew to get another helicopter and come help us. And so they turned around, and as we drove away, we had the window down still. So they had to turn around, and they were running the same direction we were driving. And the one SAR tech was running as fast as the truck was driving, full Terminator T1000 sprint. And he said, "This is what we trained for." And anyways, we got on the highway, we started driving back to the airport, and then we got stood down because the plane landed safely. But that was just a great reminder of what we train for, what we need to be ready for. And when you think about 44 people on board an aircraft with injuries, then 2 SAR techs is not going to be enough. You need 4, you need 8, you need 10, you need 16. You got to throw everything at it. So I think we've talked to our guys about that a lot. We practice that, and I try to teach people, like, when they get a mission, what do you need? You need more people, you need more equipment, and how much time do you have till you're on the target? So that can compress or expand your brain of what needs to get done and what needs to be accomplished in that time. And I think that mission that we didn't have, that we almost had in Newfoundland that time, sets us up and keeps everyone quite aware of the realities of the job and the people that we're trying to effect a rescue on and how we need to be ready for that.
Right on. Okay, guys, that is going to wrap up our conversation for today. I really enjoyed hearing about your paths to SAR, the training and experiences that shaped you both, and the careers that have prepared you for the work you're doing now. When we reconnect, I am really looking forward to going through the Baltic III rescue in detail and just kind of hearing your stories about what happened that day. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
And fly safe.
Rescue.
All right, that wraps up part 1 of our chat with Pete and Greg, where we talked about their paths to SAR. Tune in next week as we dive into the exciting story of the Baltic III rescue. Do you have any questions or comments about anything you've heard in this show? Would you or someone you know make a great guest, or do you have a great idea for a show? You can reach out to us at thepilotprojectpodcast@gmail.com or on all social media at @podpilotproject. And be sure to check out that social media for lots of great videos of our RCAF and mission aviation aircraft. As always, we'd like to thank you for tuning in and ask for your help with the big 3. That's like and follow us on social media, share with your friends, and follow and rate us 5 stars wherever you get your podcasts. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. Keep the blue side up. See ya!
Engineer, shut down all 4. Shutting down all 4 engines.